Be me, 32, software engineer. Not rich, but comfortable. Been living in my grandfather's old house for the past 5 years. He built it back in the 60s, raised my dad here, then me. Every inch of this property, every quirk, every deed line, it's etched into my soul. The community is quiet, established. Mostly older folks, some young families. The HOA used to be a phantom, just collecting dues for common area maintenance and staying out of everyone's hair. Peaceful, predictable, just how I like it. Be not me, Carol, a force of nature but the wrong kind. Moved in 3 years ago, bought the McMansion 2 doors down. Brand new money, old entitlement. Thinks her net worth gives her jurisdiction over the entire subdivision. She quickly muscled her way into the HOA presidency. Her property shares a long, straight boundary with mine, almost 150 feet of a classic chain-link fence, aged by decades, but undeniably on the true property line. A line that my grandfather himself helped survey when the subdivision was first platted. A line that has stood for over half a century. It started subtly, like a hairline crack in a foundation. One Saturday morning, while I was out getting coffee, Carol accosted me on the sidewalk. She wore an expensive designer tracksuit, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. "Jason, darling," she began, saccharine sweet, "your backyard is so rustic. I'm planning a magnificent rose garden, a proper English landscape. And frankly, that strip of land next to your fence, it's just sitting there, isn't it?" She gestured vaguely at my manicured, but simple, lawn that ran right up to the property line. "I thought perhaps you might consider selling it. Just a little extension, maybe 10 feet. It would tie into my vision beautifully." I smiled politely, but my stomach tightened. "Carol, I appreciate the offer, but this property has been in my family for generations. Every inch of it holds history. I'm not looking to sell any part of it. The fence is precisely where the property line is, and I intend to keep it that way." I even pointed out the original survey stake, still visible near the front corner, barely hidden by some ornamental grass. She scoffed, waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, those old things are never accurate anymore. Fine, fine, we'll just see about that." The tone was dismissive, but the glint in her eye was pure threat. I photographed the survey stake that afternoon, just in case. Call it instinct. A few weeks later, my peace was shattered by the drone of power tools and the shouts of workers. I walked outside to find 2 men tearing down the old chain-link fence between our properties. Not replacing it, just ripping it out. I approached them, my voice calm but firm. "Excuse me, what exactly are you doing? This fence marks the property line." One of the workers, a burly man with a scowl, wiped sweat from his brow. "Lady Carol said to take it down. Said it was old and ugly and on her land. We're just following orders." He shrugged, tossing a section of twisted metal onto a growing pile. My blood ran cold. I immediately checked the second survey stake further back along the property line, still there, untouched, clearly marking my side. I pulled out my phone, took a dozen date-stamped photos of the fence coming down, the bare ground, the workers, and both visible survey markers. As soon as they left for the day, I drafted a formal letter, certified mail, return receipt requested, to Carol and every member of the HOA board. I stated unequivocally that the fence was on the established property line, that its removal was unauthorized, and that any encroachment onto my property would be met with legal action. I included copies of my original deed and a copy of the subdivision plat map. No response, not a peep. Within days, new fence posts started going up. These weren't subtle. These posts were visibly, undeniably several feet onto my property. I watched in disbelief as they progressed. I walked out and measured. 8 feet. 8 feet of my land, annexed by Carol's new, expensive, decorative fence. 8 feet along the entire 150-foot length. A full 1,200 square feet of my property, stolen in plain sight. I marched over to her house, my calm facade cracking. She was supervising the workers, directing them with imperious gestures. "Carol," I said, my voice tight, "what do you think you're doing? This fence is 8 feet onto my property. I sent you a letter. I have surveys, deeds. You cannot do this." She turned, a smirk playing on her lips. She looked me up and down like I was an inconvenience. "Oh, Jason, don't be dramatic. It's an ugly strip of land, not like you were doing anything with it anyway. Besides, my surveyor said it was fine, and I'm the HOA president. I approve the aesthetic improvements. What are you going to do, sue me?" She laughed, a high, mocking sound that grated on my nerves. "Really, dear, just be glad you're getting a nice new fence to look at, free of charge." The audacity was staggering. I took more photos, more measurements. I sent another certified letter, even more detailed, citing specific HOA bylaws regarding architectural changes and property line disputes. Again, met with a wall of silence. The breaking point arrived 2 months later, slowly, incrementally. Carol, emboldened by my apparent inaction, finished her grandiose fence. Then her landscapers moved in. They installed an elaborate, winding stone path just inside her new fence line, which was now clearly 8 feet into my property. They planted expensive ornamental trees and shrubs, creating a dense barrier. A full-blown, English-style garden, complete with a small gazebo, now extended well onto what was legally my land. My back property line, which used to be a simple, clear boundary, was now a manicured, impenetrable jungle of someone else's property. My peace was utterly shattered. My property value was undoubtedly impacted. My rights, as a homeowner and a human being, were being trampled. The final insult, the absolute last straw, landed in my mailbox the following week. An official HOA notice, signed by Carol as president. It stated that the area bordering her new fence, which was, in fact, my property, was unsightly and unmaintained, and requested I address it within 30 days or face significant fines. My own property, now annexed by her, was being deemed a nuisance by her through the HOA. It was a declaration of war. It was no longer an annoyance. It was an outright assault on my property, my livelihood, and my fundamental right to my own land. The BOFH in me awoke, cold and calculating. I stopped reacting. I started planning. My plan began with meticulous, almost obsessive documentation. I became a librarian of grievances. First, I delved into the HOA bylaws. Every single clause, every amendment, every obscure footnote. I cross-referenced provisions for architectural review, property line disputes, board member conduct, and critically, who bears legal costs in various scenarios. I unearthed specific language that prohibited board members from using their position for personal gain or in situations of clear conflict of interest. Carol, as HOA president, approving her own encroachment and then fining me for my unmaintained property was a glaring violation. Next, county records. I pulled every available deed and survey for both my property and Carol's, going back 3 generations. I found the original subdivision plat maps, the exact GPS coordinates for all markers. My grandfather's survey, the one I had, was the official one on file, validated and revalidated over the decades. Carol had never filed any new survey with the county, nor had she applied for a single permit for her fence or landscaping. Another violation. I compiled a thick binder of photographic evidence, hundreds of date-stamped photos and videos, from before the fence came down during its construction, the finished product and her encroaching landscaping. I had photos of the survey stakes, photos of her workers, photos of her laughing at my concerns. Every email, every certified letter I sent with their return receipts was meticulously filed. I even kept a detailed log of my time spent on the issue, estimating my hourly rate as a software engineer, because time is money. Phase 2 was a brief but crucial consultation with a real estate attorney. I paid for an hour of his time, laid out my binder, and let him review everything. He confirmed what I already knew. I had an ironclad case for trespass, property damage, and nuisance. He also noted Carol's brazen disregard for HOA bylaws and her abuse of power. He gave me a rough estimate of potential costs for litigation, should it go that far, and affirmed that I could recover all my legal fees and damages. This estimate became another line item in my growing ledger of grievances. Phase 3 was the waiting game, the bait. I did absolutely nothing for 6 weeks. I let Carol's plants take root, her stone path settle. I let her become complacent, convinced I had given up. I wanted her to invest more money, more time, more effort into her illegal annexation. The deeper she dug her roots into my land, the more painful the extraction would be. I needed her overconfidence to grow, to become a massive, blind spot in her vision. I became invisible, watching. Phase 4 was assembling my attack vectors. I identified 3 distinct, yet interconnected, avenues for justice. First, the HOA itself. Carol's actions as president constituted a clear breach of fiduciary duty, conflict of interest, and blatant disregard for the association's governing documents. The HOA was liable for her negligence and dereliction of duty. Second, the county. An open and shut case of property line encroachment, unpermitted construction, and clear zoning violations. They love that kind of clear-cut case. Third, direct civil action. A personal lawsuit against Carol for trespass, property damage, and punitive damages. I calculated all my damages, the cost of my time, the attorney consultation, the devaluation of my property, the emotional distress, and crucially, the estimated cost to professionally remove her entire illegal fence and landscaping, restore my land to its original state, and install a new fence on the correct property line. The number quickly escalated, nearing $50,000. The day arrived, the HOA's annual general meeting. I dressed sharply, a dark suit, quiet confidence. I carried my massive, neatly organized binder, its contents perfectly indexed and tabbed, into the community center. Carol, oblivious, greeted me with a patronizing nod as I took a seat in the back. She opened the meeting, chirpy and self-important, rattling through treasurer's reports and landscaping updates. Then she got to new business. I raised my hand, calm as a lake. "A point of order, Madam President." Carol paused, annoyed. "Yes, Jason, is this about the new pet policy?" "No, Madam President, this is not about the pet policy. This is about a severe, ongoing violation of property rights, a breach of HOA bylaws, and substantial financial liability that the HOA, under your leadership, is currently accruing." My voice was steady, projecting just enough to cut through the murmurs. Carol's eyes narrowed. "This is hardly the forum for personal grievances, Mr. Johnson. With all due respect, Madam President, this is not a personal grievance. This is a matter of severe financial liability for the entire HOA, clear negligence by the board, and direct, documented violations of our covenants by the current president." I stood, placing my binder gently on the table in front of me. "And it is absolutely the appropriate forum." The room was silent, all eyes on us. Carol's face was tightening, a vein throbbing in her temple. "Explain yourself, Mr. Johnson." Her voice was tight with barely suppressed fury. "Gladly." I walked to the front, pulled out copies of my deeds, surveys, and the plat map. "For the benefit of the board and all homeowners present, I will outline the precise timeline and mechanics of this issue." I calmly detailed my polite refusal to sell land, the unauthorized removal of my property line fence, Carol's subsequent construction of a new fence 8 feet onto my property, her installation of expensive landscaping, and finally, the egregious HOA violation notice she issued against me for my own legally owned land. I then pulled out the thick stack of date-stamped photographs, passing a few around to show the undeniable encroachment. "Here are copies of the certified letters I sent, detailing the violations, which were ignored. Here is a copy of my property survey, which is the official county record. And here, board members, is a copy of a legal opinion from a licensed real estate attorney, confirming the clear trespass and damages." My gaze swept over the other horrified board members, then settled on Carol, whose face was now a mask of disbelief and rage. "Madam President, your actions have not only constituted a personal trespass, but by ignoring formal notices and leveraging your position as HOA president, you have made the HOA itself complicit and financially liable. Your failure to address this matter, and indeed your active participation in the transgression, has exposed every homeowner here to significant legal costs." Carol finally exploded. "This is ridiculous. He's lying. The fence is perfectly fine. My landscaper said everything was permitted." She pointed a trembling finger at me. "He just wants to cause trouble. He's a bitter old recluse." I held up another set of documents. "Madam President, with all due respect, the county surveyor's office disagrees with your landscapers, as does my attorney. I have, as of this morning, filed a formal complaint with the county zoning board for unpermitted construction and property line violations, and I have filed a civil suit for trespass, property damage, and punitive damages against you personally, Miss Carol Jenkins. Furthermore, a separate civil suit against the HOA board for dereliction of duty has been initiated, pending resolution of this matter." I placed the filed copies, stamped and dated, on the table. "I estimate the total damages, including the cost of removing your illegal fence and landscaping, restoring my property, my accumulated legal fees and punitive damages, to be in excess of $45,000, a substantial portion of which, due to the board's failure to act on my repeated notices and your direct involvement as president, Madam President, will fall on the HOA's insurance policy, impacting everyone's premiums for years to come." Her face, which had been red with fury, went bone white. The other homeowners were now an angry mob, demanding answers, demanding resignations. The illusion of her authority shattered into a million pieces. The fallout was immediate and brutal. The HOA board, suddenly facing massive legal and financial exposure, convened an emergency session that very night. They voted unanimously to suspend Carol from her presidential duties, effective immediately, and initiated an internal investigation into her conduct. They also engaged their own legal counsel, who, after reviewing my meticulously prepared binder, confirmed the grim reality of their collective liability. The county zoning board acted swiftly. A stop-work order was slapped on Carol's property, followed by a notice of violation for the unpermitted fence and landscaping. My civil suit, meanwhile, moved forward like a glacier. Carol's personal attorney, realizing the undeniable evidence, quickly offered a settlement. I held firm. My damages were clear, precise, and documented. The county surveyor's report, independently confirming my property lines, was the final nail in her coffin. She was forced to pay for the complete removal of her illegal fence and all the encroaching landscaping from my property, restoring it to its original, unimproved state. She paid significant damages directly to me, covering the cost of my time, the initial attorney fees, and punitive damages for her deliberate actions. The HOA's insurance policy, as I predicted, covered the rest of my legal fees associated with their board's negligence. Carol resigned from the HOA board in disgrace. Her reputation in the community was irrevocably shattered. The whispers followed her everywhere. She attempted to sell her house, but the highly publicized legal battles, the county violations, and her status as a pariah made it incredibly difficult. The McMansion sat on the market for months, a monument to her hubris. Update 1, 2 weeks later, Carol's contractors are finally tearing down her illegal monstrosity of a fence and digging up her precious English garden from my property. The hole where her prized hydrangeas and winding stone path used to be is now a muddy, pathetic pit. I watched from my porch, sipping coffee, as she drove by, glared at me with pure venom, but didn't say a single word. Victory tastes sweet. The HOA board formally apologized in writing for their oversight, voted to pay for a new fence on the correct property line, and fully reimbursed all my initial legal consultation fees. Justice is progressing nicely. Update 2, 1 month later. My new fence is up. A sturdy, clean cedar fence precisely on the property line. My yard is restored, grass already starting to grow back where her fancy garden once stood. Carol's house finally has a "for sale" sign in the yard. I saw her showing it to a potential couple just yesterday. I distinctly heard her trying to spin the "oversized lot" angle, referring to the now empty, muddy patch where her encroachment used to be. The couple looked confused. Then I saw them discreetly checking something on their phone, probably county property records. Her face was priceless when she realized they were looking at the actual deed map. Update 3, 2 months later. Carol's house finally sold. For significantly less than she paid for it, and only after languishing on the market for months, a local pariah. I saw her loading her last boxes into a moving truck this morning. She wouldn't even meet my eye as I waved from my porch. Heard through the grapevine she's moving to a high-rise condo, no yard, no more fences for her to build. As for my property, its value actually went up now that the dispute is settled, and there's a proper, well-maintained fence on the correct line. Sometimes, my friends, patience truly is a virtue, especially when dealing with the utterly blind and arrogant.